It doesn't, to some people, become a problem until it manifests itself as someone's arrival in the emergency room or in jail or having crashed their car. There are all these different circumstances by which someone can recognize that they are at the point where their use has become abuse. Any visit related to the emergency room related to drinking as being the nidus for why you came into the hospital is suggestive of some kind of abuse problem.
The emergency room. It's not an unusual stop for the nearly 23 million Americans over the age of 12 who are dealing with substance abuse or dependency problems. Dr. Justin Cook sees those people come through the door of the Legacy Good Samaritan emergency room every day.
I don't think anyone really understands that kind of thing until you actually spend time in an environment where you're treating this on a regular basis. But I think if you are not intimately involved with those kinds of resources, you probably don't see it. Spend a night in an emergency room, it's pretty eye-opening.
On any given day, nearly half of the patients being seen in the emergency room are there due to complications from substance abuse.
It's a problem everywhere, and we see lots of alcohol-related problems. We see everything from just people intoxicated with alcohol having fallen down and causing trauma to themselves, motor vehicle accidents. Alcohol being probably the most commonly abused substance that we see. We have a concentrated urban area where there's a lot of heroin, methamphetamines, cocaine, and those are the big street drug offenders that we see a lot of complications from.
Those drugs carry a hefty price tag. Dr. Cook says the cost of dealing with the medical implications of substance abuse is astronomical. That puts a strain on the system as well as all Americans.
50% of all visits that we see are related to substance abuse in an urban emergency room. I mean, that's really a tremendous amount of healthcare resources mobilized because of people's abuse of substances.
People often assume addiction is a problem for the younger generation, but that's not necessarily the case.
For alcohol, it's everywhere. I mean, you see people in their 20s, you see people, elderly patients having problems with alcohol, and that leading them to have traumatic events. For methamphetamines, I would say anywhere from people in their teens all the way through their 60s. And then for cocaine, it's probably a slightly younger group. One of the more profoundly memorable cases that I can think of is a young man who had essentially an arm that was just completely filleted open and an infected and exposed bone, and had been going around like that for probably a couple months, just in denial of his heroin abuse problem. But I mean, we see this kind of stuff really quite often. People who can self-medicate with their substances, and they come in quite ill. And sometimes they come in and they die from these sorts of things. It's not uncommon.
For the lucky ones, a trip to the emergency room can be what it takes to recognize there's a problem, and doctors hope those patients use it as a step in the right direction.
I clearly think that it's that moment that is the opportunity for people to understand that this is time for a change, or at least a recognition of this being a problem. And the healing process can begin with addressing the addiction and the abuse, and hopefully getting people on the right track.